Good afternoon to everyone, and good afternoon to everyone in the overflow room. This is the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles, the seventh day, and we're broadcasting today from beautiful Panama City, Florida. Sunny days and gentle ocean breezes. We like that, and I'd like to thank, this is the last day, I'd like to thank our host and hostess for providing a nice facility for us. Thanks go to them. And I'd like to thank all the ladies. We've had delicious and healthy food all week, and the food has been very well presented. So thank you, ladies. So the title today, the title is Some Points to Remember. Some Points to Remember. So first, let's blow on our shofars. We've studied earlier in the week that the day of blowing shofars could be shofars, it can be trumpets, it can be the human voice. So let's blow our shofars, our human voices. So I'd like for all of you here today to repeat after me 3 times, "Great be the name of Yahweh and His Messiah, Yeshua." So let's do it 3 times. Great be the name of Yahweh and His Messiah, Yeshua. Great be the name of Yahweh and His Messiah, Yeshua. Great be the name of Yahweh and His Messiah, Yeshua. So now maybe we have His attention and He has our attention, and we'll go along. So some points to remember. You know, in the world today, the United States and Great Britain and the other Israelite nations and the whole world really, they seem to be going downhill fast. Governments and business, the society, churches and religions, they're all going downhill fast. So an old gentleman back in the Carolinas, he's a Sabbath keeper, and he watches the news, and he speaks in his deep southern accent, and he says, "Things are getting wusser faster." Wusser faster. It means things are getting worse faster. Things are accelerating. The pace of decline is accelerating. And we'll ask ourselves today, we can all remember it, but America the Beautiful, what happened? America the Beautiful, what happened? So, in this Bible lesson today, let's turn in our Bibles and let's look back to the beginning of man's decline. The beginning of man's decline. Let's look at Satan's attitude and how that affects it. And let's see, how did Israel go wrong? All along the way, Israel went wrong. They had a few brief periods where they were in covenant with Yahweh, but they've been going mostly wrong all along. Let's look at some points to remember for believers today. You see, it's vitally important that we understand why things are going wrong. Going wrong for the United States, going wrong for the other Israelite nations. We need to understand why that's happening. And you see, it affects our nation, and it affects our personal lives as believers. So in the beginning, mankind had a wonderful and beautiful place to live. Wonderful and beautiful. Then things begin to go terribly wrong. Let's see what happened. Let's turn in our Bibles to Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2 and verse 15. Genesis chapter 2 and verse 15. And there we read, "And Yahweh Elohim took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to guard it. And Yahweh Elohim commanded the man, saying, Eat of every tree of the garden, but do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For in the day that you eat of it, you will certainly die." So that sounds a little mysterious. There's some evil tree in the garden, don't eat of it. Let's continue the story a little. Look over the page to Genesis chapter 3 and verse 1. Genesis chapter 3 and verse 1. And Adam knows not to eat of the tree, and he's told Eve. So in Genesis 3 and verse 1, and the Nahash, the serpent, the snake, the shining one, it can be translated the shining one, Satan the devil. And apparently he's in the image of a snake. All right, he was more crafty than all the lives of the field, all the beasts of the field, all the humans, which Yahweh Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, he's going to run a game on her now. He says to the woman, is it true that Elohim has said, do not eat of every tree of the garden? See, sounds innocent enough, but he's working a game on her. And the woman said to the Nahash, to the shining one, we're to eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. We can do that. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, Elohim has said, do not eat of it, do not touch it, lest you die. One translation says, don't look upon it. So something about that fruit is very dangerous. Don't look at it, don't touch it, don't eat it. So verse 4, and the serpent said to the woman, oh, you'll certainly not die. See, that's a lie. Yahweh said that they would. For Elohim knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. See, you can decide for yourself. That's what it's about. And the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise. And she took its fruit, and she ate, and she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. And that's kind of the beginning of the downfall. You see, the tree of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it's a parable. It's an analogy. It may have been a physical tree also for a physical test, but the gist of it is it's a parable. It's an analogy. So if you go to the tree and you eat the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, and if you eat a real fruit, it goes into your body, it nourishes you, it strengthens you. So this tree with fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, if you take that onto yourself, then, okay, I'm going to decide all of what I'm going to do, and nobody's going to tell me what to do. I want my rights. I can decide. I have a right to choose. I can do whatever I want, and I'll decide everything for myself. So it seems it's a weakness of humans. So rather than use Yahweh's laws for a good life, we'd rather decide for ourselves what is good and what is evil. And that's about the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. And it's like, you eat this fruit, Eve, and you'll be as wise as Elohim. Well, wouldn't we want to be wise as Elohim? That seems like a good goal. And let's look at Satan's attitude now in this matter. And let's see how it affects the situation here. Let's turn first to Isaiah chapter 14. Let's turn to Isaiah chapter 14. Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 12. Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 12. Satan's attitude. Isaiah 14 and verse 12. And here Yahweh has revealed to Isaiah to write, how you have fallen from the heavens, O shining one, son of the morning. You've been cut down to the ground, you who laid low the nations. He's an evil being. He laid low the nations. For you've said in your heart, let me go up to the heavens. Let me raise my throne above the stars of Elohim. Let me sit in the mount of appointment on the sides of the north. Let me go up above the heights of the clouds. Let me be like the Most High. And I guess if we analyze it a little bit, his real thought was, let me be the Most High. That's probably what he's wanting to do. But then, Yahweh reveals to Isaiah, says, but you were brought down to the grave, down to the sides of the pit. And those who see you stare at you, and they ponder over you, saying, is this the man that made the earth tremble? If we could actually see him, or at least after Yahweh gets through with him, he won't look so good. The man that, made the earth tremble, he shook the kingdoms, who made the world as a wilderness and destroyed its cities, and who would not open the house of his prisoners. Well, yes, that's maybe going to be a little later. Maybe that's not always happened that far yet. But you fail, O Satan, you fail. You fell from a good position. Let's find out a little more about his attitude. Let's turn to Ezekiel 28. Ezekiel has a lot to say about it. Ezekiel chapter 28. And it's going to continue with analogy. The first analogy is about a man who is possessed with Satan's attitude. He's called here the prince of Tyre, but it's a human. This first part is a human. So Isaiah 28 and verse 1, and the word of Yahweh came to me saying, this is son of man, this is a man, say to the prince of Tyre, thus says the Master Yahweh, because your heart is lifted up, that's pride, because your heart is lifted up, and you say, I am Elohim, I sit in the seat of Elohim, in the heart of the seas, whereas you are really just a man, and not Elohim, though you set your heart as the heart of Elohim. I wonder where he got that attitude. He got that from Satan, from the shining one. That's where he got it. So he says to the prince of Tyre, look, are you wiser than Daniel? And the answer would be no, you're not wiser than Daniel. Has no secret been hidden from you? Well, yes, all the secrets of Yahweh are hidden from him, but he don't believe it. He thinks he's a deity. In verse 4, by your wisdom and your understanding, you've made riches for yourself. You've gathered gold and silver into your treasures. By your great wisdom. See, Satan has great wisdom about a lot of things. He don't use it for the good always, but Satan has great wisdom. By your trade you have increased your riches, and your heart is lifted up because of your riches. Therefore, thus says the Master Yahweh, because you set your heart as the heart of Elohim, therefore I am bringing against you strangers, the ruthless ones of the nations, and they shall draw their swords against the loveliness of your wisdom, and they will profane your splendor. So, but it is a man, and he probably got rich. He probably had a lot of cheating, a lot of swindling in his trading, and he amassed a lot of wealth. And now Yahweh is going to deride him a little bit, show him he's not a deity. And he says in verse 8, he says, down into the pit they shall bring you, Prince of Tyre. They're going down into the grave. And you shall die the death of the slain in the heart of the ocean. See, probably be buried at sea. We'll see how that might be. And he's going to send the ruthless ones against him. The Babylonian Empire couldn't defeat him. You see, at Tyre, there was a huge rock out in the ocean about a half mile offshore. So on the mainland, there was a city of Tyre, and it was a pagan city, and they had dozens of pagan temples, and they had buildings. But out on the rock, on the big rock, and it was a steep rock, he built his palace out there, and he had an army garrison out there, and he kept all his treasures and riches out there. So Babylon couldn't get out there to get him. The Medes and the Persians couldn't get out there to get him. Alexander the Great and his army, they got him. They got him. They tore down the whole city of Tyre, all the temples and all the buildings, and they piled all that rubble in the ocean, and they built a causeway. They built a roadway with all that rubble out to the rock. They mounted the rock, they beat the army, they killed the Prince of Tyre, and they took all his wealth. That's what they wanted to do. Alexander the Great got him. All right, so Yahweh is going to ridicule the Prince of Tyre a little bit. So in verse 9 he says, would you still say before him who slays you, well, I am Elohim, whereas you are a man, you're not El, in the hand of him who killed you. So imagine a Greek soldier has him by the throat, and he's going to thrust him through with a sword. Now, tell that Greek guy that you're an Elohim. Oh, don't kill me, I'm a deity. You can't, yeah, he died. The Greek guy ran him through, and he was killed. So that was the Prince of Tyre. That was a man that had taken upon himself what to do for good and what to do for evil. And really what was evil to everybody else was good to this man. He made riches. That was his goal. He made riches. So let's look at another case also in Ezekiel 28, and let's look at verse 12. Now the character is different here. In verse 12 says, Son of man, that's Ezekiel, take up a lamentation for the king of Tyre. Now, the king of Tyre, you'll see, is Satan. The prince of Tyre was a man. The king of Tyre is Satan. And you shall say to him, thus says the Master Yahweh, you were sealing up in a pattern, complete in wisdom and perfect in loveliness. So he was a beautiful creature. Good-looking thing, whatever he was. You were in Eden. See, that's Satan, not a man. That was Satan. You were in Eden, the garden of Elohim, Every precious stone was your covering, the ruby, the topaz, the diamond, the beryl, and all some others, emeralds and gold. The workmanship of your settings and the mountings was prepared for you on the day you were created by Yeshua. He says in verse 14, you were the anointed cherub that covered. He was one of the two cherubs that stood on each side of Yahweh's throne and covered Yahweh's throne with their wings. The anointed cherubs that covered. There's several scriptures that tells us what that is. And he says in verse 14, I placed you there. You were on the set-apart mountain of Elohim. You walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. That's some honorable thing, I guess, around the heavenly throne, to walk in the stones of fire. It says, you were perfect in your ways from the day you were created until unrighteousness was found in you. Okay. Now, I think there is a law of angels. We can't prove it. I'll speculate on this. You can put in your notes, this is Woodrow's speculation. I think the angels had, a Torah for the angels, a law for the angels. And their book might have been a little different from ours. We're physical beings and they're spiritual beings, but probably their first commandment in the law of the angels was Yahweh is the Elohim, and he's the only one. You're to have no other deities before Yahweh. That's probably the first one, and maybe they had some others. So Satan, the shining one, his unrighteousness, he's breaking the laws in the book of the angels. We'll use that as an analogy. He says, you were perfect in your ways from the day you were created, in verse 15, until unrighteousness was found in you. In verse 16, by the greatness of your trade, you became filled with violence within, and you sinned. So I thrust you from the mountain of Elohim. I destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Your heart was lifted up because of your loveliness. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I threw you to the earth, and I laid you before kings to look at you. This will probably happen later. It's probably not happened yet, but that's what's going to happen later. So you can see how it's going on there. So Satan himself eats the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Satan wants to decide for himself. I'll decide what I'm going to do. Don't care what this law of Yahweh is. I can decide what's good for me and what's not good for me. That was attitude. And he decided to break the book of the law for the angels. He ate so much of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil that he became mentally ill. That's about what's happened to him. He became mentally ill. You see, the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and it's like this. We'll decide for ourselves what is good for us to do and what is evil for us to do. That's what humans are doing today. There's no law of Yahweh for us. And in our day, every government on earth eats of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They say, we'll decide our own laws. We'll decide what's good for us. Russia, India, China, United States, everybody. They set up kingdoms and parliaments and democracies and dictators and communist parties, and they set up laws that are good the way the leaders see it, and they make laws against evil as they see it. So with governments, and this is like in the United States, they make laws, it seems good to them, where you pay the taxes and they'll spend the taxes. And in businesses, you, the people, you will pay a high price for maybe a product that's shoddy and not too good. You pay a high price for it. Sounds good to them. And for individuals, we have freedom of choice. We demand freedom of choice today. Freedom to assemble, freedom to marry anyone or anything we want. We demand that. Freedom to abort our unborn children. Freedom to use any restroom we choose. I remember back in the 60s and 70s, there were the hippies. Anybody remember that? The hippies, and I was at a place where there were a lot of hippies, and they would sit around smoking their marijuana and burning their draft cards. I saw that. And they believed in free sex, free food, free liquor, free money, free everything. See, that's the hippies. And it was interesting to me that if anybody conservative went up to talk to them, like, whether you were a religious person or not, it would certainly include religious people. And they say, you guys need to quit doing that. That just ain't right for you to do that. They would say, we're going to do as we please. Get away from us, you holy rollers. Anybody ever hear that term, the holy rollers? Anybody conservative or anybody religious, you're a holy roller. That's what they said. They might call us, Yahweh rollers. I don't know. But anyway, they would take no instruction from anybody. And that's individuals. They demand their freedom. They want to decide what's good and right for themselves. They don't want any law of Yahweh. And churches eat that fruit. Churches take unto themselves the knowledge of what's good and what's evil. No Torah, no Yahweh. We'll decide our own doctrines. So they decide that Yahweh's law has been done away. They are anti-Yahweh, anti-Yeshua. They don't wear the mark of Yahweh in any form. That's the Sabbath and the annual days and the keeping of all the Torah. See, they won't wear the mark of Yahweh. They think they're doing good, but they wear the mark of the beast. I'm sorry, but they wear it. They wear the mark of the beast. Sunday, Christmas, Easter, Yahweh's law done away. That's the mark of the beast, the mark of Satan. So through all this deciding for yourselves, let's turn to Jeremiah 10. We'll ask Yeshua and Yahweh, what do you think about all this deciding for yourselves? Let's turn to Jeremiah 10. There's a very direct scripture that pertains to that. Jeremiah 10. Let's see if we can get there. Jeremiah 10 and verse 23. Jeremiah was inspired to write this, and this is Yahweh's appraisal of man deciding for himself. And Jeremiah says, O Yahweh, I know that the way of man is not in himself. It is not for man who walks to direct his own steps. So Yahweh is saying, no matter how much you want to do it for yourself, you're not going to get it right. You just can't do it. How about you, Sabbath keepers? Can you get it right? No, I can't get it right. If I decide for myself, I can't get it right. So we got to be careful about that. So can we decide, even as Sabbath keepers? No. Let's look some more at the effect of doing things your own way. Every Gentile empire of the world has failed because they were anti-Yahweh and they wanted to do everything for themselves. Babylon failed. Their government and society were corrupt, and we would add false religion, and they were certainly anti-Yahweh. Historians won't put that false religion in there because they don't realize that. But the Medes and the Persians, the Greeks, and later the Romans, they all decided for themselves, no law of Yahweh, and we're going to do it ourselves, and they failed. And then that was in Daniel chapter 2's big metal statue. Not on the statue was the northern king of Israel, the northern kingdom of Israel, and the southern kingdom of Judah. But for corruption and idolatry and false worship and deciding everything for themselves, they failed. The British Empire failed for corruption and poor business practices, cheating and swindling. They finally failed. The U.S. Empire, how about us? How are we doing? We're full of corruption. We have a House and the Senate and everything trying to decide everything that we want to do, and it's just not working out. You see, today, of concern for us, the United States empire is failing. And some financial consultants and some economists say, forget prophecy, just forget that, it's failing. Besides prophecy, it's failing. So we'd have to agree with that. It's getting truly, as the old gentleman said in his southern accent, it's getting wussa fassa. It's getting bad. So let's look, why is our U.S. empire failing? Why is our society so corrupt? Well, they want to eat of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil for themselves. They're going to decide for themselves what is good and what is evil. And they reject Yahweh's law. And like he said in Jeremiah 10:23, people, nations, it's not going to work. You can't do it. It's just not in you to get this right without Yahweh. You can't get it right without Yahweh. So let's look now at some scriptures about ancient Israel. Let's look at some of that. Let's turn first to Isaiah 24. Isaiah 24. Trying to get there. Isaiah 24 and verse 5. Isaiah 24 and verse 5. Now this is about ancient Israel, ancient Judah. Verse 5. The earth has been defiled under its inhabitants, because they have, 1, transgressed the Torah, they've changed the law, they've broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore a curse shall consume the earth, and those who dwell in it be punished. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth shall be burned, and few men left. It's because they've rejected Yahweh, and they're trying to decide to do what's right for themselves. Plain and simple, that's what it is. Let's look in Isaiah 29. In Isaiah 29, over a little bit, Isaiah 29 and verse 13. Isaiah 29 and verse 13. And Yahweh says, because this people has drawn near with its mouth, and with its lips they have glorified me, and they've kept its heart far from me. This society kept its heart far from me. And their fear of me has become a command of men that is taught. They've substituted in things for Yahweh's law. Now they go on, first day of the week or whatever, and, we love JC, we love JC. That's what they say, but their heart is full of corruption and law-breaking and anti-Yahweh, and then they won't live according to Yahweh's law. They want to make everything for themselves. So they put in a lot of substitutes. Let's look at Isaiah 30. Isaiah 30 and verse 1. Isaiah 30 and verse 1. And there we read, woe to the stubborn children, declares Yahweh, who make counsel, but not from me. And they devise plans, but not of my spirit, in order to add sin to sin. See, they're still doing it. That's what the United States is doing today. They take counsel and they have committee meetings in Congress, but none of that's from Yahweh. They don't take Yahweh's counsel, and they don't act according to His Spirit. So it's not going to work out. Now let's look in Isaiah 30 and verse 8. Isaiah 30 and verse 8. And Yahweh tells Isaiah, go and write it before them on a tablet, inscribe it on a scroll that is for a latter day, a witness forever. That's for us. We're in the latter day. The latter day, or at that time, in that day, and at that time, that's all biblical references to the end time. So he says, for a latter day, tell them this, that this is a rebellious people, lying children who refuse to hear the Torah of Yahweh. Who is that today? Everybody, except Yahweh's chosen. It's everybody's doing that. They want to do everything their own way. And they say to their prophets, don't see anything evil. And to their other ministers says, don't prophesy to us what is right, but speak to us what is smooth, and prophesy deceits. Boy, how about that now? Just tell us something to make us feel good. We're not going to correct anything or change anything. Just make us feel good with your message. In verse 11, turn aside from the way. That's what they choose to do. That's their own choice. Turn aside from the way. Swerve from the path. Cause the set-apart one of Israel to cease from before us. Therefore, thus says the set-apart one of Israel, because you despise this word, and you trust in oppression and perverseness, and you rely on them, therefore this sin is to you like a breach ready to fall, a bulge in a high wall, whose breaking comes suddenly and swiftly. I think this is a prophecy for the United States and Israelite nations. Some of you may have worked in construction. I worked in masonry. Mr. Isaac Merrill worked in masonry. He's probably built a high wall many times. And the way it happens, they build the high wall plumb and straight. You look at it, it's plumb and straight. Then somebody piles dirt behind it, and then it rains on that dirt a time or two. It's got a little earth pressure on it now. And in a few days, you go and look at that wall. You look at, that wall, it looks like it's leaning out just an inch or so at the top there. Well, that's not too bad. It's okay. It'll be all right. You come back in a few days, and that wall is leaning out. Oh, it's 4 or 5 inches. But it's still there. It's okay. It's going to be all right. You come back in another few days, and it's leaning out a foot, 16 inches. Wow, it's not fallen yet. Maybe it'll be all right. That's the way the United States is. Maybe we'll be all right. And then when it gets out that far, just suddenly it falls down all at once. So I wonder, is that a prophecy for our day? It says in the latter days, it might be a prophecy. This is what's going to happen to the Israelite nations. Even though they're sinning, they think, well, we're getting by. It's all right. It's all right. A sudden collapse, it falls. Just like the wall with the dirt behind it. Sudden destruction. Let's look at Isaiah 59. Isaiah 59. We'll get some more about Israel's poor history. Isaiah 59, and we'll start in verse 1, says, look, Isaiah 59:1, the hand of Yahweh is not become too short to save, nor his ear too heavy to hear. We can still pray. We can still go to him and ask him things. But Israel, your sin has separated you from Elohim. Your choices of what is right and wrong has separated you from Elohim. And your sins have hidden his face from you, from hearing. For your hands, Yahweh likes to give lists sometimes of good or of evil. It says, here's a list. For your hands have been defiled with blood, your fingers with sin, and your lips have spoken falsehood, and your tongue mutters unrighteousness. That's some things he's got against Israel. They're doing that. They're deciding to do that all on their own. They've rejected Torah. It says, no one calls for righteousness. No one pleads for truth. They trust in emptiness. They speak worthlessness. They conceive trouble, and they bring forth wickedness. Then he's got another analogy here. They have hatched adder's eggs. The puff adder in the Middle East and in Africa, it kills more people than cobras. The puff adder is highly venomous. So if you get bitten, this was from National Geographic films, if you get bitten on the foot or the leg by a puff adder, you've got 20 minutes to get the antivenom. If you can't get it in 20 minutes, you might as well just have a Coke, because you're going to die. So he says, all right, this is how your society is. Israel, it's like adder's eggs. You've hatched poisonous adder's eggs, and they weave a spider's web. Whoever eats these eggs, whoever takes part in this, it says, dies. Whoever takes part in it dies. And when one of the eggs is broken, an adder is hatched. It gets worse. It gets worse. In verse 6, their webs do not become garments. There's no good comes from their spider webs, their plotting, their planning, nor do they cover themselves with their works. Their works are works of wickedness, and a deed of violence is in their hands. Their feet run to evil, and they hurry to shed innocent blood. Their thoughts are thoughts of wickedness. Wasting and ruin are in their highways. The way of peace they have not known, and there is no right ruling in their ways. They've made crooked paths for themselves, that's sinful paths. Whoever treads in them shall not know peace. And that's from deciding, we can decide what to do for ourselves. We know what we want to do. We'll get it right. No, you're not going to get it right. It's not in you to get it right. All right, let's look at Isaiah 59 and verse 11. It says, 59 verse 11, all of us growl like bears. We're quarreling, we're growling. They moan sadly like doves. We look for right rulings, but there is none. We look for deliverance, but it's far from us. There's no peace. We're known in America today as not as the peaceful nation, as the rat race nation. See, there's no peace in the rat race. If you have to get in that traffic jam twice a day, you're not going to have much peace. All right, let's look Isaiah 59 and verse 13. Isaiah 59 and verse 13. Transgressing and being untrue to Yahweh, turning away from our Elohim, speaking oppression and apostasy, conceiving and pondering words of falsehood from the heart, and the right ruling is driven back, and righteousness stands afar off. For truth has fallen in the street, and right is unable to enter. Gay rights, abortion rights, usury. See, all these things are the law of the land. You got to be careful how you speak against it, or you'll be accused of a hate crime. That's how we become twisted today. And that's from, we'll decide without Yahweh. We don't want any holy roller, even Yahweh. We don't want anybody telling us what to do. We're going to decide all this for ourselves. And this is what we get. This is what Israel got. I think it's just parallel with what's going on in the United States today. Let's turn to Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 1. See a little more about it. I think in the scriptures, Father Yahweh describes this eloquently and colorfully, doesn't he? He's got colorful analogies through it, but it describes the problem. We'll look at Jeremiah 1 and verse 16. He'll give us another list here. I'll pronounce my judgments against the Israelites concerning all their evil, because they've forsaken me, they've burned incense to other mighty ones, idolatry, they've bowed themselves to the works of their own hands. That's 3 sins. So let's look now in Jeremiah 6. Jeremiah 6 and verse 16. Jeremiah 6 and verse 16. Now he's going to give some advice. He's patient and he's merciful. He wants Israel to come back to him. He wants the United States to come back to him. But he tells ancient Israel, in Jeremiah 6 and verse 16, thus says Yahweh, stand in the ways and see. Ask for the old paths, where the good way is, and walk in it, and find rest for yourselves. But they said, we do not walk in it. They're making their choice. We're not going to walk in the old paths. All right, and then 17, all right, I raised up a watchman over you and said, Ezekiel is the watchman writing here, and in the United States there's several ministries that are acting as watchmen. And he says, listen to a voice of a shofar, a warning. And they said, we don't listen. We're going to do it our own way. We're not going to listen to any warning from Yahweh. And in verse 17, I raised up watchmen, we won't listen. Verse 18, therefore hear, you nations, and know, O congregation, what is upon them. Hear, O earth, see, I'm bringing evil upon this people, even the fruit of their thoughts, because they've not listened to my words nor my Torah, and they rejected it. They deliberately rejected Yahweh's law. So, oh, we can do this ourselves. We're pretty smart. This is under Satan's influence. We're pretty smart. We can decide this. We've got master's degrees and PhDs, and we've got, really smart people to vote on this for us. No, you're not going to get it right. Yahweh says, it's not in you to get this right. You can't do it. That's in Jeremiah 16. Let's turn back a little bit, or at Jeremiah 6, let's turn to Jeremiah 7. Jeremiah 7 and verse 1. Jeremiah 7 and verse 1. And the word that came to Jeremiah from Yahweh saying, see, he authenticates it, this is the word of Yahweh. And verse 2, Jeremiah 7 and verse 2, stand in the gate of the house of Yahweh, and you proclaim there this word, and say, hear the word of Yahweh, all you of Judah who enter in at these gates to bow before Yahweh. Now, I'm thinking maybe the preaching in the United States is going to get to be more prominent. It's going to get to be more prominent as time goes on. Thus says Yahweh of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, make your ways and your deeds good, and then I'll let you dwell in this place. Do not trust in these false words, saying, this is the temple of Yahweh, the temple of Yahweh, the temple of Yahweh. They thought, well, we've got the temple in Jerusalem. As long as we'll go there once in a while, then all this other stuff we're doing will be okay. That's kind of what they thought. Let's see what he says about this. He gives a list. Here's what you need to repent of Judah and Israel and the United States. For if you truly make your ways and your deeds good, this is in verse 5, if you truly do right ruling between a man and his neighbor, if you do not oppress the stranger, the fatherless, the widow, if you do not shed innocent blood in this place or walk after other mighty ones to your evil, that's 5 or 6 things. If you will do that, then I will let you dwell in this place, in the land that I gave to your fathers forever. Well, they wouldn't do any of that, so they got thrown out of the land. They got thrown out by Assyria. They got thrown out by Babylon. They got thrown out by Greece. They just got thrown out. So in verse Verse 8 says, see, you're trusting in false words which don't profit. You're trusting in false words which don't profit. It's the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. You're stealing. Here's another list. It says, here's what you're doing. This is what you've chosen to do. This is what you think is right. Stealing, murdering, committing adultery, swearing falsely, burning incense to Baal, walking after other mighty ones you have not known. And you came and you stood before me in this house, which is called by my name, and you said, we have been delivered in order to do all these abominations. You know, we come to on the Sabbath, we come to the temple, so we've been delivered. We can do these abominations. No, that's what they decided to do in their own hearts. It's wrong. You can't do it that way. And let's look in Jeremiah 7 and verse 13. Jeremiah 7 and verse 13. And now, because you've done all these works, Jeremiah 7 and verse 13, you've done all these works, you've done all this deciding for yourself, declares Yahweh, and I spoke to you, rising early and speaking, but you did not hear, and I called you, but you did not answer. You didn't answer. Has Yahweh been fair? Yes, he's warned them hundreds of times. He's completely fair. They can't ever come up in the judgment day and say, well, we didn't know that was your will. See, they can't say that. He says he's been telling them all along. And in verse 13, and now, because you've done all these works, declares Yahweh, I spoke to you, rising early, speaking, but you didn't hear. I called you, but you didn't answer. All right, I shall also do to this house, which is called by my name, that's the temple, in which you trust, and to the place which I gave you and your fathers, I'm going to do to it as I did to Shiloh. Shiloh's where they had the tabernacle, the tent. And it was completely destroyed by the Philistines. And later on, they even took the Ark of the Covenant. So he's saying, and they all knew, see, we might not know right off what happened to Shiloh, but I looked up and read on it some. It was completely destroyed by the Philistines. And says, I'm going to do that to the temple because you've chosen to do what you've chosen to do. Verse 15, I'll cast you out of my presence as I've cast out all your brothers, all the seed of Ephraim. And 16, and you, let me wait a minute on that one. So I'll cast you out of my presence. I'll cast out all your brothers, all the seed of Ephraim. So he's telling them, here's what you're doing wrong. Here's what's going to happen if you don't change. Oh, we don't believe that. We've decided that's all done away. Okay, we'll see. And he says in verse 16, now you, Jeremiah it is this time, do not pray for this people, nor lift up a cry or a prayer for them. It's as if Yahweh has given up on them. I'm writing you off. You're not going to change. After 200 or 300 years of pleading with you, you're not going to change. So, Jeremiah, don't pray for these people. And if you do pray for them, I won't hear you. That's what he's saying. Let's look in Jeremiah 14. Jeremiah 14 and verse 13. Jeremiah 14 and verse 13. Jeremiah 14 and verse 13. But I said, Master Yahweh, see, the prophets say to them, you are not to see a sword, you're not to have scarcity of food, for I give you true peace in this place. What does Yeshua say in Matthew 24? He says, you're going to have war, you're going to have rumors of war, you're going to have famines, you're going to have pestilence. Well, no, we don't believe in that. We're going to decide for ourselves what we're going to have in the future. So they says, okay, you're not going to have the sword. This is the minister telling them this. You won't have famine, you won't have disease. So then Yahweh said to me, the prophets prophesy falsehood in my name. They deceive a lot of people. This is the will of the Lord or whatever. I have not sent them, nor commanded them, nor spoken to them. They are prophesying to you a false vision, worthless divination, and the deceit of their own heart. See, that's 99% of the United States today. Peace, peace. And the way they say you're not going to have famine, you're not going to have the sword, is secret rapture. Come on, people, just as soon as trouble starts, you're going to be secretly raptured away into the heavens. And that way you won't have any trouble. So, some Baptists confronted me on that, and I told them, well, it was kind of a friendly thing. I said, look, you're relying on promises that are not in the Bible. They didn't like that. I shouldn't have said that, I guess. But anyway, let's look at Jeremiah 18. Jeremiah 18, verses 11. Jeremiah 18 and 11. Jeremiah 18 and 11. And now speak to the men of Judah, to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and you say, thus says Yahweh, see, I'm forming evil and devising a plan against you. But you got a chance. Return now, everyone, from his evil way, and make your ways and your deeds good. See, I'm devising a plan against you, but you can still repent. And in verse 12, but they shall say, oh, this is awful. They'll say, it's no use, for we walk according to our own plans, and we do each one of us the stubbornness of his own evil heart. And I've written in mine, in my margin, and we like it. We're doing our own thing. We're not going to hear you, and we like it. So that's awful. It's no use, Yahweh. We're going to do it our own way. We can decide this. We're going to eat the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. We're going to decide what's good for us, and we're going to decide what's evil for us. And it ain't working. It's not working. So there's a scripture here. I'll read it to you again, and you help me figure this one out now. But the United States today, we're full of Sunday, Christmas, Easter, the mark of the beast, the mark of Satan, no school prayer, unlimited abortions, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender marriage. You can marry anybody. You can use any restroom you like. The government is corrupt. We have medical sorcery, and our society is full of usury. Our society is full of usury, all these sins. Now let's look back to Jeremiah 7. Look back to Jeremiah 7 a minute. In verse 16, Jeremiah 7 and verse 16. Is this the United States today? I'm afraid. You help me decide. I'm afraid we're getting close to this. Jeremiah 7:16, it may already have started. Don't pray for this people of the United States. Don't lift up a cry or a prayer for them, nor make intercession to me, for I do not hear you. Could we possibly be getting close to that today? It's a terrible thought, but it might already be there. So let's look at some scriptures now about the rescue by Yahweh, the rescue. Let's turn to Isaiah 25. Isaiah 25. I'm going to turn back a little to get to that one. Isaiah 25. These are some rescue scriptures. Isaiah 25 and verse 9. Isaiah 25 and verse 9. And it shall be in that day. See, that's in the end time. It'll be in that day. See, this is our Elohim. We have waited for him, and he saves us. This is Yahweh. We've waited for him. Let us be glad and rejoice in his deliverance. See, we still got a chance. We still got a chance. Let's look at Isaiah 46. Isaiah 46. And verse 3, Isaiah 46 and verse 3. Listen to me, O house of Jacob, and all the remnant of the house of Israel, who are born from the belly, who are carried from the womb. See, that's us. We're part of Jacob. He says, even to your old age, I am he. Even to gray hairs I carry. Praise Yahweh. There's a lot of gray hair here. So even to gray hairs, I'm carrying you. I've made and I bear and I carry and I rescue. To whom do you liken me and compare me and make me similar, that we should be alike? No one else, no other deity, no other being is making that promise. Now, Russia did that back in the 60s and 70s. They had a policy, we'll take care of you from the cradle to the grave. But they didn't mean a blessing. They just meant we'll control you and oppress you from the cradle to the grave. That's what they meant. But Yahweh is saying, look, people, be with me, be in my covenant. I'll take care of you from the cradle to the grave. That sounds good to me. Let's look at Isaiah 48. Isaiah 48 and verse 16. Isaiah 48 and verse 16. He says, "Come near to me and hear this. I have not spoken in secret from the beginning." You know, his plan is not secret. I've talked to you openly from the beginning. From the time that it was, I was there. From the beginning, I was there. And now the Master Yahweh has sent me in his Spirit. Thus said Yahweh, your Redeemer, the set-apart one of Israel. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. I am teaching you what is best, leading you by the way you should go. We will respond and accept that. The United States will probably say, we don't want it. We're going to do it our own way. So verse 18, if only you, Israel, United States, if you had only listened to my commands, then your peace would have been like a river, and your righteousness like the waves of the sea. It's Torah. The righteousness would be Torah. Let's look in Isaiah 51. It's close by there. Isaiah 51 and verse 1. Isaiah 51 and verse 1. Listen to me, you who pursue righteousness, seeking Yahweh. Look to the rock you were hewn from, and to the hole of the pit where you were dug from. You know, get back to your original. Get back to your origin. And get back to that. And Isaiah 51 and verse 7. Isaiah 51 and verse 7. Listen to me, you who know righteousness, a people in whose heart is my Torah. Do not fear the reproach of men, nor be afraid of their revelings. So the Torah is in our hearts. So we shouldn't fear men that ridicule us. Let's look at verse 12, Isaiah 51 and verse 12. He says, Yahweh says, I am the one, I am he who comforts you. Who are you that you should be afraid of man that dies, and of the Son of Man who is made like grass? So we're not to fear, earthly people, earthly kingdoms. And verse 16, I have put my words in your mouth, and with the shadow of my hand I have covered you, to plant the heavens and lay the foundations of the earth, and to say to Zion, you are my people. You wear the mark of Yahweh, he's going to say, you are my people. So that's an interesting thing there. He'll protect you in the shadow of his hand. I do this myself, and I know other people who pray, Yahweh, protect us in the shadow of your hand. And it comes from this verse. And I think he can protect us from anything in the shadow of his hand. Let's look at Isaiah 59 and 1. Isaiah 59 and 1. Isaiah 59, 1. Look, the hand of Yahweh has not become too short to save, nor his ear too heavy to hear. Whenever we try to go back to him, he's going to be there. He's going to be there. Let's turn to Jeremiah 9. Jeremiah 9 and verse 23. Jeremiah 9 and verse 23. Thus says Yahweh, let not the wise boast in his wisdom, let not the mighty boast in his might, nor let the rich boast in his riches. That's the United States, all that boasting. It says, but let him who boasts, boast in this, that he understands and knows me, that I am Yahweh, doing loving commitment, right ruling, righteousness in the earth, for in these I delight. See, so he has an optimistic future for us. He does. He has an optimistic future for us. So, some points to remember for the latter days. The prophecy is that, warfare, disease, famines. Do we believe prophecy? I do. I think it's going to happen. It still looks good out there. Traffic's still flowing. There's still food in the grocery stores. It's not collapsed yet, but there is a threat that our enemies may explode a nuclear weapon over the United States at a high altitude, maybe 10 or 20 miles, and it will generate an EMP, electromagnetic pulse. And that's supposed to destroy all our computers. Your cars won't work, your home computer won't work, your business computer won't work, the electric company computers won't work. So commercial stops, commercial business stops. What's a believer to do? What are we going to do? We know it's coming. There's a scripture that gives us a little advice. It's in Proverbs. Proverbs has a lot of wise sayings. Let's turn to Proverbs 22. Proverbs chapter 22 gives us a little advice. Let's look at this a little bit. Proverbs 22 and verse 3. Proverbs 22 and verse 3. This is in Yahweh's scriptures. Proverbs 22 and verse 3. A clever one foresees evil and hides himself. I want to be a clever one. A clever one foresees evil and hides himself. But the simple go on and are punished. I don't want to be one of the simple. So what are we to do? What are we to do? So some people today will say, well, I'm going to just trust Yahweh to protect me, and I'm going to sit in my living room and I'm going to do nothing. So I don't know. There's a saying, I don't think it's a scripture maybe, but there's a saying that Yahweh likes to help those who will try to help themselves. So we're gonna try to work on this Proverbs 22 thing. We're going to see evil, and we're going to take some practical steps to protect ourselves. Some practical, physical things that we can do now. This is some things I recommend that we might do. You can get books on this. Save a little cash at home. Save a little cash at home. If you see a big crowd outside the bank, 300 or 400 people waiting in line, don't go over there. There's only one reason for that crowd to be there. It's a run on the bank. They think it's going to fail. They're going to try to get a lot of money out. And of course, they can't do that. It won't work. Run on the bank. And your credit cards may not work. Your debit cards probably won't work. There's no electricity, see, maybe. So you'd be better off if you got a little cash at home. Hide it where it can't be easily found. Then at least you got a little bit. You can buy a little gasoline if there is any. You can buy a few groceries if there is any. You might could trade or buy something with your neighbors. But so save a little cash. Save a little gasoline at home. Get you a gas can. It might be that various things could happen. There could be riots near your home where there's not now. There could be forest fires. There could be hurricane damage, tornado damage. You might have to move 30 or 40 miles to stay with a friend or a relative. So if you got no gasoline, you're stuck. So get you a little gasoline and store some food and bottled water. You don't have to go out and do it all at once, but if every time you go grocery shopping, if you get 2 or 3 cans of beans or a pack of water or something, in a few weeks you've got quite a bit. And try to get some extra fuel, get some propane, get an extra propane tank. And if you go to the stores when it's on sale, like Sam's or Walmart, sometimes charcoal is pretty cheap. Get you several bags of charcoal. Save them, keep them dry in your garage or your attic. And you might get a little pile of firewood if you can. And also, as always, you might need matches, flashlights, a manual can opener. Don't get those cans of beans and go home and try to open them with an electric can opener. That won't work. You might get a hatchet and a pocket knife. Get you a first aid kit. You can go to some store and get a plastic box, and you can make up your own first aid kit about as good as you can buy one ready-made. And try to reduce your medications if you can. That's going to help you. And here's one that's important to me. We'll see what you think about it. For your protection in the end time, don't buy lottery tickets. Don't buy lottery tickets. I'll tell you why. People, I talked with a man, and I pray for Yahweh to provide for me and to bless me and provide me with what I need. And this fellow was saying, well, Woodrow, why don't you get you a Powerball ticket? It's up to $40 million. No, I'm not going to do it. And he said, what's the matter? You don't want $40 million? Couldn't you do it? And I said, well, I might could, but I don't want it. And then he walked off shaking his head. He thought it was crazy. He thought I was a holy roller, I guess. But to me, it would be a breach of faith. To me, it would be a breach of faith on my part. I pray, Father Yahweh, protect me, take care of me, provide for me. Yeah. So if I buy even one lottery ticket, that might show him that, well, Father Yahweh, you're not providing for me as well as I would like to be provided for. I'm going to try to get the Powerball to help provide for me. Yeah. See, so I'm not buying any lotto tickets. I'd recommend that. That could be a spiritual thing too. And we'll have to realize that if you do all these things to prepare for disaster, and you might can think of some others you need to do, whatever, it's all right. But no amount of storing guns, storing food, storing water, you can't save yourself out of this.
No.
But you ought to prepare anyway. And my prayer is that Yahweh will add where we lack. And when you store this, you got to realize if there's riots and looting, you may lose it all the first day. But hey, it's better to have it than to not have it. So I'm not going to buy a lottery ticket. So some points to remember, some practical spiritual things that you can do for now. Remember the will of Yahweh. Remember the covenant of Yahweh. Remember the mark of Yahweh. Mark of Yahweh is keep the Sabbath days, keep the annual days, keep all the Torah, keep the mark of Yahweh. Now, what are we to do in the end time? Let's turn. Here's a great scripture. Turn to Deuteronomy 10. Deuteronomy 10. Got some instructions here. This could be a memory verse for us. Deuteronomy 10. Deuteronomy chapter 10. Deuteronomy chapter 10 and verse 12. This is relevant for our day. It was relevant in Israel's day. But Deuteronomy 10 and verse 12. And now, Israel, what is Yahweh your Elohim asking of you? I want to know that. Do you want to know that? I want to know that. What is Yahweh your Elohim asking of you? But to fear Yahweh your Elohim, respect Him, to walk in all His ways, to love Him, to serve Him, your Elohim, with all your heart and with all your being, to guard the commands of Yahweh and His laws, which I command you today for your good. He wants you to be all in to Yahweh's program. Be all in to Yahweh's program. So as times get hard, we can remember that, and that's what we're going to do. Let's turn to 1 John chapter 4. It's another scripture we need to be aware of. 1 John chapter 4. 1 John chapter 4 and verse 1. And there's a lot of deception. Satan's trying to deceive us, 1 John chapter 4 and verse 1. Beloved ones, first fruits, do not believe every spirit, but prove the spirits, whether they are of Yahweh, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. So prove the spirits. The way that's done in this day and age by most people is, well, I like it. It sounds pretty good. That's the way they try the spirits. And the speaker, he was forceful and he was very convicted of his topic. So I'm going to follow him. He's talking me into it. No, that ain't right. All my friends like this new idea. No, that's not the way you try the spirits. You compare any new doctrine to the Torah. You pray to Yahweh for guidance and knowledge. And it's already an attack on the Sabbath assemblies. It's the lunar Sabbaths, the solar Sabbaths, the Enoch calendar, and other stuff. It's devastating, the assemblies. People are believing that. They're not trying the spirits in the right way. Here's the way you try them. If the new idea or any idea, if it's clearly in Torah with 2 or 3 witnesses, it's probably right and good, and we ought to do it. All right. If it's not clearly in Torah, reject it. If it's not clearly in Torah, reject it. And let's look across at 1 John 2. 1 John 2 and 15. Satan knows this, and sometimes we don't act like we know it. 1 John 2 and 15, do not love the world, nor that which is in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Now, what is the love of the world? He's going to tell you in the next verse. So, because all that's in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. So, the lust of the flesh, that's sexual immorality, adultery, fornication. You got to avoid that. As we get older and older, it's less of a problem, I guess. And we got to try to avoid the lust of the eyes. That's material things. I want a new car. I want a boat. I want a second boat. I want a motorcycle. I want a new house. I want a new vacation. If you're into material things, pretty soon your material things and pursuit of them, it takes up all your time. You don't have time to go to the Sabbath service. You don't have time to pray. And what I think is the worst one of these is the pride of life. That's in there. The pride of life is, well, you're pretty good people. Y'all are pretty smart. You've been keeping Torah for 20 or 30 years. You know a lot of Torah, and you're a lot smarter than just the average peasant or commoner. So you can see this new idea. You realize this would be good for the assembly. You realize this new idea, this could be of Yahweh. That's the way they appeal to you in the pride of life. The pride of life is you take the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil and you decide for yourself. You're smart enough to do it. That's how he got Eve. The pride of life. You can decide this, honey. You can decide it. So she could not decide it. And in Deuteronomy 4 and verse 2, I'll quote that one to you. Remember this as we get into the end time a little more. Deuteronomy 4 and verse 2, it says, don't add to Torah, don't take away from Torah. When we get to the end time, is Yahweh going to relax the Torah? No, it's going to be the same. Yeshua said, the same laws are here now, we're not going to change. It's tragic, but I know that some of the assemblies of some of the bigger churches, the United Church, I know them well, but they have an elders conference, and they sit around the conference table with a box of donuts and a pot of coffee. I guess I'm suggesting that. I don't know if they do or not, but they actually do this. I talked to some of them. They decide, well, what of Yahweh's laws are required for salvation and what are not. They've decided that physical circumcision is not required for salvation. They've decided clean and unclean meats is an option. If you feel serious about it, then don't eat, but it's an option. It's an option for salvation. And several other things. They've decided several other things, but we need to remember Jeremiah 16:16. Remember the old paths when you had it good. Get back to spiritual life when it was simple. That we don't have need for new ideas. The Enoch calendar, the lunar calendar, the solar calendar, we don't need that. Get back to the old ways. And we can remember some things to remember. John 14:15. You see, everybody in the world of Christendom, they love Messiah. Oh, we love JC. We just love JC. Well, wait a minute. You're keeping Sunday and Christmas and Easter, and you love JC? All right. Scripture says, John 14:15, this is Yeshua, if you love me, keep my commandments. Hallelujah. That's not complicated. We can do that. We can do that. And today, a lot of people, they want to search for the nature of Yahweh, the one God theory. See, they work on that. I'm not sure the human mind can understand the nature of Yahweh. We might not can understand it, but we don't need that. We're not commanded to try to understand the nature of Yahweh. We're commanded to keep the commandments. So we don't need to get into that. And then another verse in Hebrews 10 and 25, it says, don't forsake the assembling together as the day approaches. So a lot of people in the congregations of Yahweh and the assemblies of Yahweh, they don't come for a few weeks, and you call them up and say, well, we're just going to stay home, keep the Sabbath at home today. Well, are you sick? No, we're not sick. Well, are you injured? Have you been hurt? No, we're not injured. We just decided to stay home. Maybe that's lazy. Might be lazy, but the author of Hebrews says, don't forsake the assembling together as the day approaches. When you come to the Sabbath meeting every week, you get a new shot of Yahweh's Holy Spirit. You get a reinforcement shot, so it'll help you. You can get into the habit of coming to the Sabbath service. You can get into the habit of not coming to the Sabbath service. So don't ever get in the bad habit. Always stay in the good habit. So physically and spiritually, if you're a survivor, you will survive. Keep to Yahweh's laws and survive. If you're not a survivor, you're not going to survive. You have to stay in Torah to survive. So we'll remember in the end time there'll be shortages. We'll try to prepare ahead. Yahweh says it's a wise man that will prepare ahead. He says so in Proverbs. And we'll remember that Satan is attacking us. And I think our greatest weakness in the end time is the pride of life. Now, you people are pretty smart. You can figure this out. You're smarter than the average Christian. You can do this. It's how he got Eve. He appealed to her. And I think on down into the end time, this is one of our greatest weaknesses, and Satan's going to work on us on it. the pride of life. Other things are going to come along to deceive us, but it's going to be, you're great, you're wise, you can decide for yourself. Resist that. Go in prayer to that. Go to the Torah for that. Jeremiah 10 says, man cannot direct his own paths. I believe that. You got to read that and you got to believe that. So, in Joshua, we'll close with this. In Joshua chapter 24, he'd seen Israel rebel against him and have a lot of trouble and whatever. So, near the end of his life in Joshua 24, Joshua says, as for me and my house, we will serve Yahweh. That's a good point for all of us. So as we close today, we'll say, great be the name of Yahweh and his Messiah, Yeshua. I hope you'll all have a good remainder of the feast.